Honors, let's have a conversation. We gotta have a talk. You guys have always had the absolute best kits when it came to Arc, Solar, Void, Stasis, Strand, and now with the final shape, you guys have the best prismatic kits out there. Well, maybe Warlocks have you beat, but you guys have such a strong kit. Whether you want to spam your clones or be a titan and punch everything and get through all of your content, you guys have a ton of options you can do. It was so good for you guys. You guys were the only ones that could really do a witness, but that's a conversation for another day. Warlocks, we are up there with Prismatic. Titans, I'm sorry, but hopefully one day you guys get some love. If you guys remember, we did a 1-2 punch build a little while ago. Today, we're going to be upgrading that build in several ways with Prismatic. If you're new here, welcome to the family, and if you've been here, welcome home. Let's get into it. If you're familiar with the 1-2 Hunter Punch build, then you know for sure you're gonna have some iteration of Liar's Handshake and build into your arc. That's fine. But today we're gonna be looking at Prismatic, and we're gonna be using the Hunter exotic class item, the Relativism. There's different variants of this that you can use. For the longest time, I was using Spirit of Renewal and Spirit of the Liar. Spirit of the Renewal enhanced our Dustfield grenades to give us Frost Armor, which is a damage reduction that's new in the final shape. And with Liar, your counter punch is going to deal extra damage. So you're able to get your damage reduction from your Dustfield grenade. You'll typically always have a grenade with this build on top of getting your extra damage out with Liar's Handshake. Now, the other variant of this build is going to be Spirit of Caliban and Spirit of the Liar. Now, you're essentially taking Caliban so you can create ignitions off of every powered melee final blow. And then you're going to pair that with Spirit of the Liar. For every time you do a counter punch or you punch after being meleeed by an enemy, you're going to do increased damage. If you take that and then you pair that with combination blow, which we'll get into later on in the video, you're going to have this huge damage output from your hunter, and you really don't even need your weapons to do this. If you're familiar with the Salvation's Edge raid, during the last encounter when you're fighting the Witness, you'll see that there's a ton of ads, and sometimes the ad clearing isn't too good. There's no shame in that. It is a pretty tough encounter. The 1-2 punch build that we're going to be using today, that actually allows you to get combination blow times 3 and almost one-shot the subjugators, which is arguably harder than the Witness during that encounter. So we're going to be using Spirit of Caliban and Spirit of the Liar for this video, but if you have Spirit of Renewal and Spirit of the Liar, that also works. Just something to note, guys, if you don't have the relativism with Caliban Liar or Renewal Liar, you can always just run Liar's Handshake. A big misconception is when you're running Prismatic, you have to have the exotic class item. That is not the case. You can still run Liar's Handshake if you don't have a good exotic class item. And feel free to experiment with the different combo rules on it. Not everybody is going to have Caliban Liar, especially with the drop situation going on in Destiny right now regarding the exotics. But like I said, if you don't have Caliban Liar or Renewal Liar or any iteration with Liar that you think is going to be good, you can just run Liar's Handshake by itself. Let's take a look at our Prismatic subclass. We can run whatever super we want. I find myself running Storm's Edge or Shadow Shot Deadfall. The only reason I kind of teeter-totter between them is because if I want to have fun, if I want to get in and out, I'm going to use Storm's Edge. But if I'm doing crowd control, super good crowd control, and I'm not really worrying about chunking yellow bars, champions, subjugators, and some activities, I'm going to run Shadow Shot Deadfall just to kind of crowd control, get the super out, tether a ton of enemies, and just start punching everything. If you want, you can also run Silence and Squall. Silence and Squall is a really good crowd control super. Again, don't stress too much on the super. Cater it to what activity you're running. I find myself running Silence, Storm's Edge, or Shadow Shot. Just kind of depends. Sometimes I'll run Golden Gun, maybe I'll run Silk Strike. It just depends on the activity that I'm running. For our abilities, we are going to be running Gambler's Dodge, so we can have that ability loop where we get our melee powered kill, and it'll refresh our dodge. When we dodge, it'll refresh our melee. Your jump, that's your personal preference, doesn't matter. For our melee, we are going to run Combination Blow. This stacks up to 3 times. Each stack gives you an increase to your damage. When you have 3 stacks of Combination Blow, you're pretty much one-shotting your champions, your subjugators, any high health target. They're going to be shredded due to Combination Blow times 3. For a grenade, you can run whatever grenade you want. Now, for my gameplay loop, I typically run Duskfield. It just helps with slowing and freezing targets. What I do to just to kind of take this build to the next level, I'll throw down my Duskfield grenade and then dodge near enemies. That'll instantly freeze them. And then when I do my powered melee, not only am I going to create an ignition, but I'm getting a ton of shatter damage as well, which just helps with damage output and chunking enemies, and just with that crowd control aspect, everything around you is going to die. For our aspects, we are going to run Stylus Executioner. Defeating a target affected by any elemental debuff grants invisibility and true sight. If we go back to what grenade we're running, if you're running Duskfield grenade and they're slowed, frozen, whatever the case is, that's going to proc Stylus Executioner, which is going to give you invisibility and give you true sight. The next aspect we're going to run is Winter Shroud. Dodging slows nearby targets. I run this again just so I can freeze or slow enemies. Pairing this with Duskfield Grenade, not only am I now adding ignitions into my 1-2 punch build, but I'm adding in shatter damage as well. For our fragments, we are running Faucet of Dawn. Powered melee hits against targets makes you radiant. Powered melee final blows makes you and nearby allies radiant. Now, I like this for 2 reasons. 1, when you're radiant, you can stun barrier champions with your guns. 2, you also do increased damage with your guns. The next fragment we're going to be running is Faucet of Courage. Your Arc, Solar, and Void abilities deal increased damage to targets afflicted with darkness debuffs. Faucet of Purpose. Picking up an orb of power grants either Amplified, Restoration, Frost Armor, Woven Mail, or Overshield based on the damage type of your equipped super. Faucet of Sacrifice. While you have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, ability final blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. And Faucet of Ruin. Increases the size and damage of the burst when you shatter a stasis crystal or frozen targets, and increases the area of effect of solar ignitions. So let's pair this back with our Duskfield Grenade and Winter Shroud. Not only are we going to have increased damage when we're shattering a frozen target or a stasis crystal, but we're going to be increasing the area of effect of our solar ignition with Faucet of Ruin. So we're going to be getting a buff on our Duskfield Winter Shroud combo loop, and because we have Spirit of the Caliban on our cloak, we're going to be getting ignitions, and the ignitions will be buffed with this fragment. So for our weapons, this is a melee based build, right? We're not going to too much worry about our weapon choice. Your weapon choice is entirely up to you depending on what activity. But the weapons that I usually run is Conditional Finality or Recluse, and I could run an Eager Sword, I can run my Apex Predator, I can run an LMG, or I can run a grenade launcher. It doesn't really matter. If you're going into higher level content, in-game content, you might want a rocket launcher, but if you're just running some strikes, just doing your gambit runs for the week, you might want to take an LMG. That is totally up to you. If you don't have a conditional finality, you could do any gun with 1-2 punch, you could do a mountaintop, you could do a fusion. It's really based around your own preference. If we're gonna go by what I'm running, I'm gonna be using conditional, recluse, apex. A good alternative that I use sometimes is mountaintop, sunshot, apex. Just depends on what you want to run. Have fun with it. For our mods, on our helmet, we're going to run hands-on, which is going to give us bonus super energy on melee kills. We're also going to run dynamo. It's going to reduce the super cooldown when we use our class ability near targets. For our gauntlets, we're going to run impact induction and heavy-handed. Impact induction will allow us to cause damage with our power melee to reduce our grenades, and heavy-handed will actually generate orbs of power for our melee final blows. For your chest piece, you can run any resistance mod you're doing, cater it around whatever activity you're doing. You can replace one resistance mod for a concussive dampener or whatever you think is going to be better for your activity in your Grandmaster Nightfalls, you might want to run something different. That way you're not taking a ton of area of effect damage, or you might just want to run straight resistance mod so you take a little bit less damage. For our boots, we're going to be running Absolution, Innervation, and Recuperation. And on our cloak, we will run Bomber, Powerful Attraction, and Reaper. Now, there are a couple different ways to run this. If you're going to run the Duskfield Grenades, you can always throw down a Duskfield Grenade and then dodge near the enemy. You're going to freeze them. Pairing this with some of the perks that we have from our subclass, you're going to get a ton more shatter damage. And when you get your melee kill, a charged melee kill, you're going to have ignition. So your shatter and ignition is going to do 10 times more damage on top of the Liar's Handshake perk, giving you more damage on your second charged melee hit. Now, you can do this the traditional way, where you're just punching enemies and dodging to refresh, but you can juice out just a little bit more damage. Doing it this way, one-shotting and two-shotting subjugators in the raid, or even champions in Grandmaster Nightfalls, it's a breeze. And keep in mind, this also works in master raids as well. I know that we just got Salvation's Edge on master difficulty, so using this build in there is definitely still worth it. Not even just for the witness, but when you're going through first phase, second phase, third phase, you're gonna be breezing through all of those encounters because of how strong this build is, especially when you start pairing things like your Duskfield Grenade and your dodge. Now, if you're not running a Caliban Liar's cloak, you can run Renewal. The Renewal is good because when you throw your Duskfield Grenade and you're standing in it, you're going to get Frost Hammer, which is going to be a damage reduction on top of healing yourself back with Liar. But if you want to really maximize it, you can do Caliban because of the ignition damage, which is so strong. Just keep that in mind when you're looping your gameplay together and experiment with what works. If you have a different perk combination other than Caliban and Renewal that you like, let me know down in the comments how that works out for you guys. So we've put the build together and we've talked about how to use it most effectively. Let's talk about why the build is just overall good. I've used this build throughout numerous activities, whether that's Grandmaster Nightfalls, Master Raids, regular raids, dungeons, even Onslaught, just to test it, to go through all the different waves of enemies. And this build is just overall good. I haven't had a moment where it's like, man, I wish I had a different build on. Maybe another build is better for that situation or better catered for that team, like an Omnioculus build to go invisible to secure a res. But this build allows me to, one, keep myself alive with the health refresh that I'm going to get, and pumping out high amounts of damage. Now, before, the build didn't give you crowd control. With the ignition that you're going to be getting, you're going to have more crowd control. Sure, you could jolt the enemies, but how jolt works now, getting those ignitions and combusting all the enemies mixed with all the perks that we're getting from Prismatic subclass, this build is just overall better in my opinion. Now, I've even been able to take some of my friends through master dungeons with this build who aren't real familiar with the dungeons, and even help them through raids because of how good the build is. I'm not only worrying about myself, but I'm also worrying about my weapon setup. I can change my weapon loadouts with this build. I don't feel like I'm restricted to using specific weapons to make the build work. This is an ability based build that works all around. It's versatile. If I'm in a dungeon and I want to put on Whisper or Sleeper, I can do that. If I'm in a raid and I want to run Microcosm, I can do that as well. So overall, this build is just really good, and I haven't really seen any issues with it in any of the activities that I'm doing. That's all I have for you guys today. This is the really fun Prismatic Hunter build that I've had a lot of fun enjoying, and I'm able to use this build over different types of content and not feeling like I'm lacking anything. It definitely gives me the flexibility to change my weapons around depending on whatever activity that I'm doing, or if I'm helping somebody out through their own missions. Let me know what you guys would do to make the build better, or what you think you would change to make the build better for you in the comments down below. If you're new here, leaving a subscription and a like and telling your friends about the video goes a long way, and it means the world to me. We also use and make new builds live over on Twitch, so if you haven't already, go over to Twitch, give me a follow, and it'll let you know when I'm live, and you can feel free to stop by and chat in. I appreciate you guys a million. We're almost at 400 subscribers, so let's continue to smash the sub button and get closer to it. Let me know what class or subclass you guys want to see next, and I'll make sure to get those done for you. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.